Hello and welcome to Spotlight On. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Today, the spotlight is on Jorma and Vanessa Kaukonen, who together own and operate the Fur Peace Ranch, a place where, in their words, they grow guitar players, and where they've been originating an ongoing series of quarantine concerts since April of 2020. Jorma is a rock and roll Hall of Famer and co-founder of two iconic bands, the Jefferson Airplane and Hot Tuna. Vanessa manages the family businesses, utilizing not only her background in engineering and design, but also her empathic qualities as a health coach and healer. Before I tell you more about today's episode, I'd like to tell you about something else near and dear to me, live concerts. Due to the ongoing COVID pandemic, attending live concerts is not an option right now, and many of our neighborhood independent venues are at risk of closing forever. The fight to save the local music scene can be joined by following the hashtag #SaveOurStages. This effort is brought to you by NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, a 501c6. Check it out. At the Fur Peace Ranch, Jorma and Vanessa Kaukonen host guitar students of all ability levels for small group instruction from Jorma and his master musician friends, a sampling of which includes G.E. Smith, Arlo Guthrie, Jack Casady, Warren Haynes, Patty Larkin, Jimmy Dale Gilmore, Roy Bookbinder, and many, many others. A brilliant pairing of artistic and engineering temperaments, Jorma and Vanessa tell the story of discovering the ranch land in 1989 and building out the property over the next 30 years. Today they use the 200-seat Fur Peace Station Theater to broadcast an ongoing weekly series of quarantine concerts, which find Jorma engaging with his songbook and musical history in ways he hadn't been doing before, despite playing scores of shows every year for many, many years. Jorma defined the "you don't want to meet your heroes" stereotype. He and Vanessa were wonderfully open with their personal and professional tales, including incredibly warm shares about Grace Slick, the Reverend Gary Davis, and the fundamental nature of the blues. We also discovered our shared membership in a secret club and discussed my cameo appearance on a Jorma live album. Please enjoy my conversation with Jorma and Vanessa Kaukonen.
Hey Lawrence, how are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm fine. I've got Vanessa sitting next to me here also.
Hi, Laura.
Oh, wonderful. Good morning.
If Jorma gets stuck, I'll be here.
Well, thanks for making time. It's great to speak with you.
Where are you?
I'm in beautiful, sunny Seattle, Washington.
Wow.
Oh.
Fancy that.
The epicenter.
Yeah. We have the dubious distinction. Yeah.
The epicenter's moved on. You're okay.
It's part of the 2 months out of the year where it's actually beautiful to be here.
Yeah, I remember living in Northern California. It's you move there on those days that are beautiful, and then you realize there's 5 of them a year.
Yeah, exactly. I moved here about 4 years ago. I was in New York for the better part of 20 years. But when I first moved out here, I was feeling sort of out of sorts and away from home. And lo and behold, there was an electric Hot Tuna show booked at the Neptune Theater here in Seattle. And it was part of the comfort food that helped me ease my transition into my new environment. So I owe you a debt of gratitude for that.
We're there for you.
Always have been.
Yeah.
So
maybe we'll get to play the Neptune Theater again someday. Who knows?
Yeah, I hope so, and I hope they're still there to be able to host you. That's a pretty serious issue. Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk to you today, about the impact of the COVID situation on your life as a touring musician, and as a business person, and specifically about the quarantine concerts you've been doing. And I hope we might be able to talk, if you could just give me a little context, or give our listeners context, about the history of the ranch, and sort of how, I don't want to assume what people know about the history of Fur Peace and how it got to be what it is today.
Well, listen, it's really good that we have Vanessa here right now, because I'm going to hand this one off to her, because I'm a productive partner, but she's really a prime mover. So I'm aiming the phone at her.
I'm just gonna hold on a second. So back in '88, we were living in Woodstock, New York, and Jorma got a call from an old friend that he hadn't seen, I don't know, maybe 20 years or so, 30 maybe, and I could hear the guy talked really loud, and I could hear his pre-cell phones, and I could hear his voice like bellowing over the phone, and he was saying, Jorma, I got this land for sale. And I'm listening to Jorma, yeah, Southeast Ohio, yeah, cool. And I'm standing off to the side, like motioning, hang the phone up, like buying land in Ohio, you nuts. And Jorma hung the phone up. He goes, I'm going to grab a flight. I'm going to go check out this property. Well, we had only been married, I don't know, a year?
Actually, it was 89.
It was 89.
It was a year.
It was a year, yeah, because it was winter. We
Right.
got married December 7th,
88.
1988. So Jorma hops the plane to Columbus, drives down to Southeast Ohio, meets these guys. These guys were movers and shakers back in the 60s, that's all I'm going to say. And they showed him around the property. Now, a winter in Southeast Ohio is like anywhere else that experiences a winter with, everything gray and dead and hibernating. It was abysmal looking, but Jorma, something about this land, it was bigger than the land, just was whispering in Jorma's ear the whole time. A couple days later, he comes home. I couldn't get a hold of him because we didn't have cell phones. You just wait until your person called back in those days. And he comes back a couple days later with a deed, like a promissory deed. I'm like, what's this? Yeah, bought 119 acres for 500 an acre. And I looked at him, I'm like, we'd both been married before. I'm like, maybe it's been a while. I go, but you're really supposed to check with your spouse first before you go doing these things? And I said, don't utter a word. We're not telling anyone we own land in Ohio. We're going to get rid of this albatross. Well, a year later, we were packed up like the Beverly Hillbillies, moving to this piece of property that had nothing on it. In the interim, we had found a little farmhouse, a little pre-Civil War farmhouse, 8 miles down the road from this property, and that's where we moved. And those were sad times for me. I was not a happy camper.
And what kind of environment were you used to living in? Were you a city person? Were you what was the biggest jarring part of it?
No, I met Jorma. I was living in Key West. I was had gone down there to I'd gone down there to do a design job for a company that had just purchased the old Truman Annex Navy base, which was, back in the 40s, 30s, 40s, it was like Camp David. Harry Truman's little White House. I mean, this developer, I worked for the developer's wife. He purchased this whole property and was turning it into a resort and what have you. So I was down there after I was newly divorced, and life was pretty darn good. But this comes out in a lot of stories that we do as a couple and even separately. I was not sober then, and neither was Jorma. So I could have been living in the Taj Mahal and I would not have been happy. So we moved to Ohio. This is the short version. Moved to Ohio. We did nothing with this land for a couple of years. I got sober, and my sister and I, we'd made a joke in Woodstock that this is where we're going to live. We were going to, build a guitar camp, a ranch that grew guitar players. And it was a joke. So my sister and I, we're close in age, 2 years. She's brilliant. I was a civil engineer prior and had gone into design. So we just started with this blank piece of property, came out here with an architect, walked it off. I originally said, okay, we got some bottom land here. We'll build everything on stilts. As an engineer, I should have known that you never build on bottom land. But the local architect, then disappeared into the thicket, and I'm holding this huge, 200-foot tape measure, and he disappears into the thicket. He's like, yep. He comes out, he's like covered with briars. He says, we can build it right here. And I'm looking at him like, you're nuts. You're just as crazy as my husband. What am I doing here? And you know what we did? We hired another local, we're in farm country here. I met this wonderful contractor. His name is Bob Jones. He's an artist with a backhoe. He came up here and basically leveled that thicket, and lo and behold, the site appeared. It was here. I believe this is getting a little woo-woo. I believe that's what was whispering to Jorma, but he couldn't see it. Yeah. So a year later, I had the initial plans, took it to an architect because I can't stamp any drawings. In the midst of becoming a civil engineer, I got divorced, and so I did everything except take my final exam so I could stamp drawings. I worked for firms, where the principals would get everything approved. Anyways, took it to an architect. Yep, we can do this. Meanwhile, this is in the middle of nowhere, but I believed that we could create a school. And the whole while, Jorma was, okay, if you say so. In the interim of us building this, Jorma got sober. So we built the initial stage of the Fur Peace Ranch, which was 17 double occupancy cabins, a workshop, a small theater, or a workshop, small theater space. They shared the same space, a 2-story library, and a 150-year-old log cabin, which was our dining hall. And over the years, it's grown to, we have 126 acres. We have a 200-seat theater, and we've had a NPR live radio show, which is where our quarantine concerts are recorded and filmed now for, I think, 17 years. It's been going on 17 years?
Oh my gosh, I think it's longer. No, it is longer than that. It's got to be 20.
This might be our 20th year for the theater. We have a New Morning Cafe, so we have a gallery cafe. We have an outdoor grill and kind of a takeout place for the ticket holders that come in, and it's all, we have a grill, so we do food fresh, but we have prepared desserts and coffees and teas and stuff like that. And a couple of years ago, 5-6 years ago, I had a brilliant idea after going into a silo in upstate New York that was supposed to be the world's largest kaleidoscope, and it's on Route 28, up in between Woodstock and Phoenicia. And so we were teaching up at the New Moon, another facility. We visit other facilities once a year, Full Moon Resort. And so while Jorma was teaching, I took off to explore the area. I hadn't been back to Woodstock in a long time. And there was this world's largest kaleidoscope built back in the 60s by this father and son. And it was in a silo attached to the Emerson Resort. And kaleidoscope, who doesn't love a kaleidoscope? So we go in this thing, silos about 10 feet in circumference. You went in, they shut the lights off. They had this recorded voice of a kind of a Bob Barker type voice, and you lay on these little carpeted platforms, and you're looking up at this kaleidoscope, and it literally was a real kaleidoscope with all of the glass and 16 different panels, but the recording and the video was put in these panels, and you saw 16 different versions of an animation appeared, and it was the history of America, and they started the animation with Washington in 16 different panels, 16 different versions of Washington crossing the Delaware in this little cartoon, and they go through the, industrial era, and then they get to the 60s. I'm cutting out a lot here, but this is where my brilliant idea to have a silo came in. They get to the 60s and they show a pot leaf, and the pot leaf's got 16 different versions of it, and they're playing the Rolling Stones, like some, Satisfaction, I don't remember what it was. And John, my ranch manager, is with me, and I look over at him and I smack him, I go, what? I also gave up cursing, but I said, what the bleep is this? And this isn't the 60s. And so we left, I didn't even make it out of the silo. I'm in the guest kind of gift shop area of the Emerson Hotel because it was attached. And I said, this is BS. I'm like, I'm going to build a silo and I'm going to show what the 60s really was about. And he's like, yeah, okay. Like, you're nuts. And a year and a half later, I found a silo, which is actually a grain bin, brand new from a company in St. Louis. It's called Brock. They're dotted all over the Midwest. I had it shipped on a flatbed and 10 different parts and hired a local farmer because they know how to put up silos. And we put up this silo and I built a gallery. And it's called the Psychedelic Gallery. It's PSYLODELIC. And it hosts, honors, celebrates, and teaches about an era in the 60s from 1962 to 1969.
Wow.
With art, I have a Jerry Garcia exhibit. Yesterday, I just put up a Ram Dass exhibit. I've had Grace Slick's art, Marty Balance art. I had Jeannie Rose, who made clothes for everybody. I've had her stuff. I've got Baron Woolman's photography, which is a permanent exhibit. I've had the guitars that were at Woodstock. I had the sleeping bag that Wavy Gravy slept in at Woodstock. I've had Jack's clothes from Woodstock. I've got jewelry from Monterey.
And we teach guitar lessons too.
So that's just the gallery. The other part, that was just a side thing. I had no business doing that. We opened a school. We were supposed to be doing the school, and the school is successful. I have a 97% return rate of students.
That's incredible.
I still have an addictive personality. So
well, I will say this. I appreciate you bringing that element into the conversation because I'm in the club with you as well. So I'm in the secret society of that. I share that affliction with you, and I wanted to tell you a story about that sort of has something to do with that. I've been seeing Jorma in various configurations, probably since maybe the mid '80s or so, when he sort of got back on the road with Jack. And I've seen all the configurations: solo, duo, electric, the string band, Blue Country, all that stuff. And I've always felt like it was going to see an old friend. But back in the days when I was sort of an ardent aficionado of the drink, I had a habit of I would heckle. And whenever I would go see Jorma and Jack wasn't there, I would yell out, "Where's Jack?" And my friends would always, they would cringe waiting for me to do it. And Jorma, you've heard my voice, I can assure you. And it actually made it onto one of your official releases. And you put out a show from Toad's Place in New Haven in your digital download series. And I yelled out, "Where's Jack?" And you said, sort of grumbling, he said, "I think he's out with the hovercraft." and so I have a friend of mine now. Whenever we talk about some friend, any third party male friend in the abstract, they'll say, "Yeah, I think he's out with the hovercraft."
Good times.
Good time. Yeah. So anyway, I've made my mark on a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. So
absolutely.
You've built you've built this incredible sort of cottage industry, which is a mixture of it's sort of to me an amazing American story of having just enough crazy vision and just enough crazy resources to realize your vision.
Exactly.
It also strikes me that you're sort of like exactly the right people for this blank canvas that you came across. Or actually, when Vanessa was describing the briar patch and the architect, the thing that came to mind was a sculpture, and sort of how a sculpture can just look at a chunk of rock or a chunk of clay and see something hiding inside of it, and they just have to go dig for it. That's what it sounds like you've been doing with the ranch, is that it's this unformed piece of earth that you've whittled away at it and uncovered all these beautiful things underneath it.
Well, in the spirit of that secret society we've sort of alluded to, you can make plans, but you can't plan the outcome. It's just interesting the way life sometimes gives you unexpected gifts. And you know, and for us, like I said, the Ness and I were just, it's funny, we were just kind of talking about this morning a little bit. We really are the perfect partners for things like this because, you know, I wouldn't have the vision or really the inclination to do what's necessary to make this happen, because it requires on some level, regardless of how wacky the idea is, it requires the same person to make the infrastructure work, you know.
Yeah.
And also, you know, just in terms of what in the beginning about what I brought to the table here, which was somebody that liked to teach, which oddly, you know, being a professional musician really all my life, I always really enjoyed teaching. I started out doing that before I got in the airplane. And in fact, I continued it the first year the airplane was together and made more money teaching than I did with the band. So there was that aspect of it also to bring to the table. And also I think our vision here, because there's a lot of people that kind of do what we do, but nobody that exactly does it. But there's a lot of workshops and this and that. But for me, the guitar has really been so much more than just the music, although obviously it's, you know, 99.9% the music, but there are those social aspects of it too. You know, guitar playing to me has always been a very social event, you know. And I don't play saxophone, but it just seems to me like guitar players are just more sociable than sax players. I don't know. Some sax players are going to hate me for saying that, but so when we started to teach, and I realized that my method of learning, and it was and still is very anecdotal. You know, I listen to things. I try to figure out what's going on. I try to figure out how it relates to what I can do, et cetera, et cetera. So my teaching style has always been very anecdotal. It's not like cut and dried. And, you know, people finally, well, I need a tab of this and that. I'm not a tab guy. If they want it, I'll have somebody do it, but that's not me. So anyway, so to bring this sort of sociable, anybody can do this. Some people are better at it than others, but anybody can do this thing to the infrastructure that Vanessa's vision created here really worked out pretty well. And the guests, you know, we have all these great guest instructors. We'll get to the pandemic at some point because obviously everything's changed in the last half a year. But the instructions that we get there, everybody's got their own method, but still it's the same thing. It's a social thing. It's a good hang, and almost everybody. I'm trying to be moderately accurate. Almost everybody has a really good time.
Yeah. That vibe comes across. That vibe definitely comes across. I mean, just the fact that if you're a guitar aficionado or a student or a nerd, however you want to phrase it, and you find yourself traveling to rural Ohio to go hang out with some of the instructors that are in the course, you know, in the course materials, never mind
right. With
Jorma, it's pretty clear. It would be pretty, it seems like it would be pretty difficult for it to be a bad time.
Right. Yeah, one of the things we've noticed is that, and we've been very fortunate too, because, you know, I mean, anybody who has a business where you deal with the public realize that dealing with the public is always fraught with peril. You know? Yeah. But like I said, people that come down to visit us here, for the most, really, you know, almost to a person, have pretty much the same vision that we do, and that's a good thing.
And one of the really important things that we didn't know was an important thing, like so much was manifested after the fact, but it really happened because of sobriety. When I said, you know, Southeast Ohio's are abysmal, that's what we saw when we first discovered, when this property found us. The winters, the landscape, spring, summer, all of it. It is, Southeast Ohio is one of the most stunning places on the planet. And I've been a lot of places. It looks a lot like the south of France. We have trailers, they have castles, but the landscape is so beautiful, and the magic of the land is felt by the students because of what the universe offered us in exchange for honoring our bodies, honoring our lives, saying, you know, because at one point, and I'll speak for Jorma in this. At some point, you know, we both uttered those words, just save my sorry, you know what, and I'll do whatever, you know, get me out of this.
Yeah.
I'll be better. I'll do what you want me to do. I did say that. I said that on my knees. And this was it. This was that gift. And it is a struggle to keep 126 acres functioning during a pandemic. It is a struggle to keep, you know, all Jorma's shows have been taken away. Jorma's he does he flies drones, and he took one of the most beautiful shots of the property. He takes them all the time, but the other day, this shot, and I'll send it to you because I have your email, and you can see how beautiful it is and what an amazing place it is to be quarantined. We have everything we need to still reach our audience, to still introduce the beauty of the land and the special ability that Jorma has to teach his music and the shows. You know, we didn't know the shows were going to heal us. We keep doing them because we keep you know, needing and that healing, because this COVID has robbed us all of so much. But the blessings of this pandemic are things like the quarantine concert, and Jorma's teaching virtually, you know, one-on-one in small group classes. And he is still able to teach in that dynamic way that he is known for virtually, like he could do in person. We talk about the magic of Fur Peace. I really believe that this place is special. And so when, you know, you get back what you put out, we are extremely grateful that we're able to do what we do right now in this time.
It sounds like it's another manifestation of the idea that, you know, one view of this could be that you're putting this out there to help other people get through the pandemic, but really by helping other people, you're really helping yourselves as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It turned out to be, you know, when I did my 3-year plan, I didn't see any of this. The bank makes you do a 3-year plan, and you're like, I don't know, okay, we're going to need this much paper, we're going to need this many staff, we're going to need this much food, we're going to need this many supplies, this many guitar stands. Throw the 3-year plan out after the first month, because it means nothing. We ended up needing more than we thought, spending 3 times what we thought we'd spend. And that first year was, I thought, oh goodness. Well, I don't think we're going to be able to do this. But what we were offered back was a 97% return rate of students. And it really was that field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. You know, I'm going to use the word God, whatever God is to you, because God is something very different to me. I'm not, I believe in a power greater than me, but I'm not a religious person. But, you know, this was, God's given us everything that we absolutely need to do this good. And it's really hard. It's really hard to run a luxury business. You know, people don't need you. They want you. Well, wants go out the window when anything goes wrong with the economy or jobs or family or anything. But I have had 3,000 students say to me, no, you don't understand, Vanessa. We need you. Because we apparently fulfill that same thing that is given to us every time we open a camp, that grateful, you know, it's like, okay, God, I get it. This is what you want me to do. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do this. Well, when they come here, when our students come here, we plug them into something that they can't get in the real world, and their jobs on Wall Street, and their, you know, legal offices, and
you know, in the beginning.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
In the beginning, you know, when we first started out, people would go, not people that have been here, but there's a conversation out in the world about that we're a fantasy camp, which I found offensive. I mean, first of all, I look, hey, listen, whatever it takes to have fun for everybody, I encourage them to have fun. However, you know, if you think, my thought of a fantasy camp was like a guy probably younger than me, but not a kid, dressing up like Jim Dandy in Black Oak, Arkansas, pretending to rock and roll stuff. I mean,
Jim Dandy.
I mean that's a frightening thought. So I was sort of offended by that. But anyway, but that's my problem. But in any case, yeah, it's just that, you know, all of a sudden we seem to find an interesting place, and you, of course, you can't plan this kind of stuff. The other thing too is like, you know, invoking this pandemic nonsense. I played my last show at a casino in St. Louis with
March 3rd.
With Hot Tuna, March 3rd, and after that, we were going to have and I'm not complaining because it could be worse, but we were going to have our best year ever at the ranch and touring. I mean, this was.
We had Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, we had all kinds
booked for Jorma's 80th birthday in December.
Yeah, we had all kinds of stuff, but like everybody else, all that has changed, you know. But now, if you think about being quarantined, you know, having 126 acres with all these buildings and stuff, that's not the same thing as one of my good buddies who's a financially comfortable, but living in like a 3-room apartment with his wife and 3 kids, you know, in London. I mean, because that's the deal. So you know, we talk every now and then. I go, man, I feel for you. I mean, I can wander around, I can do this and that, and also, you know, because I live in a rural area, we haven't been hit as hard yet with the pandemic, although thanks to some of the students coming back and being, you know, not being sensible, it's coming here too. But in any case, so I guess Vanessa and I, again, were just talking about this morning. We have a 14-year-old daughter that's about to be a sophomore in high school. It's been tough on her, but like I told her and my son, who's in college, at least you guys aren't graduating this year. You know, more will be revealed, I'm sure, before this is all over. But so their world has been turned upside down. And my son's a young man; he's working and stuff like that, so it's different. But all these little dreams that we all had when we were in high school, that my daughter has and stuff, that's not happening. That's out the window, and it's probably not going to happen. Who knows?
Well, it's out the window for now.
Yeah, for now.
Because we don't know.
No, we don't.
Something will reveal itself.
Totally.
And for the kids, all they have is right now, right? They have no context. Everything's so immediate when you're that age.
No, they don't.
So heightened. Yeah.
But what they do have, and the guys like me don't have, is time. You know, so that's one way to look at it. But the other thing is, look, you know, we've been so fortunate that, you know, we don't have a mortgage. You know, we own this piece of property, so we've been okay here. And you know, I started to do the Corona concerts because we can't do real concerts right now because we just can't. And so we started doing them, and it gave me purpose again, because I play the guitar all the time, but I like playing for people. So even though there's nobody in the audience but us, I know you guys are out there. I can feel it, you know. And so all of a sudden, it just became hugely important. You know, people thank us for it, and I go, "You're so welcome, but thanks for listening. We do it anyway." And then we started to get like donations and stuff like that, which we didn't even solicit in the beginning. And
that's helped pay for the crew that volunteers their time.
So we've been able to pay for the crew.
So we can pay the crew.
We have been so, you know, we've been so blessed in this whole process that I've been able to keep my identity and share some of that with people who give a darn about what we're doing.
And, you know, the questions, the Q&A stuff, you know, a lot of the stuff Jorma wrote in the book, but there's stories. There's stories that have come out that were not in the book, so we're like, okay, you got another book in you. And Jorma's attention to like detail when he's remembering things, like he talked about, my daughter she runs the long shot camera, and we had some friends, because we invited one of her friends and their parents, and we isolate them in the back of the room, but at least she can see one of her friends. And I'm like, you know, telling her, okay, keep it clean, you know. And he talked about his father getting dosed and all of his acid and all this stuff, and I'm like sitting there, you know, with my hand across my neck, no. And it turned out to be really an amazing story. And what transpired with these Q&As is Jorma going so deep and dissecting that question. Like someone will say, hey, how do you feel about so-and-so, or, oh, tell us about the motorcycle ride you took with
Hunter
Thompson. And Jorma, the motorcycle detail, the you know, everything about Hunter, you know, what he was thinking at the time. It wasn't just, hey, yeah, that was cool. And so these stories have really opened up this whole other level of appreciation that Jorma's fans had for him, for his ability to play, but they look forward to it every Saturday night, and it's their, you know, it's the one night that they, after, because a lot of people are still working, some people aren't working, people are working from home. Everyone's lives have changed. So Jorma said that these concerts have given him purpose. They're doing the same for people that are sitting there. They're forgetting about, I'm going to just say it, they're forgetting about Donald Trump for, you know, an hour and a half.
There, you said it.
I said it. Now you know
it's out in the open.
I stand. And it really, I don't tell Jorma the questions. I don't tell them what I'm going to ask them. They come to me, and I weed a lot of them out because a lot of them are repeats, and, you know, no one wants to know who slept with. Everybody slept with Grace. The only person who didn't sleep with Grace was Marty. So I won't ask him, oh, is it true you slept with Grace? I won't ask Jorma those questions because it's none of their damn business anyways. Yeah. And the good news about Jorma's stories is he still doesn't dish dirt on anyone. He owns his part in the story. And that's refreshing for people. We're painfully honest people. You better be careful when you ask us a question.
Yeah, don't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
I had a simple, I went to my favorite coffee shop. I just wanted my drink. And the owner wanted to make the drink like they do in Italy. And I said, if I wanted an Italian espresso, I'd go to Italy. And she goes, you're so honest. I'm like, make my drink. I'm like, you know. Yeah,
I get that a lot out here as well. Being from New York,
sure.
When I first came to Seattle, it was, you got to slow down, man. you gotta take the long way to get there.
That's funny stuff.
It's important. I think the honesty that comes out in Jorma's stories has really. There are people that look forward to the Q&A sometimes more than whatever song he's going to play.
You know, something about the Q&A that strikes me, and I wonder if you guys agree with what I'm about to say, which is, I feel like the sort of like stage banter and engaging with the crowd wasn't really part of Jorma's like stage presentation. When you go see him, you know, live in the real world, there's sort of a bare minimum of, you know, he might laugh at a heckler or tell a very quick anecdote, but I don't think of Jorma as the kind of artist who gets up there and sort of raps at the crowd. So I think that's a really interesting, different piece of just the artistic presentation of this series, is that, you know, you get some insight into the breadth of the repertoire, because you can watch so many shows and it's like, oh my gosh, like I go see Jorma and I get, 18 songs, but you realize there's 300 more that he has the ability to pull out. But there's also, it's not the same show that you've seen for the last however long you've been a fan. This is a different medium. And I wonder what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, I don't like script my life, because that's not who I am, but when we started to do this, and of course it's evolved on some level too. Like, you talk about when I'm doing a show, I'm, depending on the audience, depending on what the audience has going on, I might or might not be a chatty Cathy. I'm normally not. Although over the years, Jack and I have started to banter more and say it's just because it's fun. But for the most part, I don't think I thought about it like this back then. But since I'm doing things differently now, I think about, look, if I'm going to do a concert, I'm not Ramblin' Jack Elliott, where the concert is Ramblin' Jack,
Yeah.
If I'm going to do a concert, I'm there to play songs, and that's what I'm going to do. If we get some banter going, fine. But that's not really what my show is about. That being said, when we got into this Corona concert thing too, Vanessa and I we dialogue on the show just like we do at home. That's who we are. And so every now and then you get somebody that goes, well, we want more music and less talk. And And, you know, I could be flippant about it, and I might be to Vanessa off mic, but the truth of the matter is, and I've said, and I've sort of alluded to this, is look, if you're paying to see a concert, I'm going to give you a concert. But this is free. And if you don't want to listen to it, you don't have to. But what you get is what Vanessa and I bring to the table. And part of it is that banter. It's the kind of thing that I think I enjoyed in some of those older variety shows, you know, back in the, you know, the quote unquote, the golden age of television, where, you know, you'd have artists doing this and that, but there'd also be just some funny talking. And, you know, we're not doing shtick, but on some level, it is our shtick. That's who we are, you know, and we've really found that to be a lot of fun. And so, you know, if people don't like it, sorry, because that's what we're doing. And, you know, and Vanessa feels all these things on whatever media. I'm not a Facebook guy, so I don't do any of that kind of stuff, but she's got chat things going while the show is going on. And we really get some funny stuff really pops up. It's like, holy mackerel, these people are human beings, you know? But they are, you know. But the good news is we get to do what it is that we want to do, and that's how it is. And, you know, again, you know, from the point of view, we've sort of been dancing around the recovering person concept, but, you know, I spent so many years, I didn't get sober until I was in my mid-50s. I'm about to be almost 80 years old, so it's been a while, but, you know, but it took me most of my life to not be afraid to engage, you know, to engage honestly. And so the ability to do that to me is such a blessing, given we'll be right here, Vanessa. Yeah. She's about to do some serious stuff. It's such a blessing, you know, to not be afraid, to not be fearful of showing people who you are and being able to engage in some sort of a productive conversation. Now, I'm not talking about bearing my soul and doing a fifth step or whatever and that kind of stuff. That's not what we're talking about, you know. But just to be who I am and to be okay with that is a cool thing. And
showing up,
you know, and the venue that we have to do that with a quarantine concert, it's like, yeah, this is really fun. Again, you know, to get back to how this little snip started about concerts. Again, if I'm at a concert, that's my goal. There is to give a concert, and if I get an audience that's not just some heckler, and we all know what we're talking about. Hey, thanks for the "Where's Jack," by the way. No, I'm just kidding. But sometimes you get an audience that actually does. Somebody that does invite that conversation, but it doesn't happen often, and I don't seek it out. Anyway, does that make any sense at all?
No, it absolutely does, and I think it's some insight into what the difference is between what you're doing now and what you do when. I really like the distinction that you make of, you know, when somebody buys a ticket to Hot Tuna or Jorma show, there's a specific thing they're buying a ticket to. When they show up on Saturday night and click on the live stream, that's a different thing. And it speaks to the medium, it speaks to the times. Yeah. So, how, you know, I had a list of questions that you guys sort of answered about how this all came together, but I'm curious, if you don't mind me nerding out a little bit on.
Yeah, go ahead.
At any given time, what's the breadth of your repertoire that you could construct a set list from? Like, how many songs do you have to play?
Okay, yeah. So one of the things, that's a good question, because, you know, again, there have been many blessings hidden along with what's happened to us all here. And one of the things is that, you know, Jack and I know a lot of songs, and I know a lot of songs at any given time. But there's also lots of stuff that's fallen by the wayside for whatever reason over the years. So when we started out doing the show, my goal, I'm starting to repeat stuff again, even though I've got about 140 songs to pick from. But in the beginning, my whole thing was I'm not going to repeat anything on any given weekend. And I wanted to resuscitate at least one and maybe two songs that have not been played for decades. And so I normally don't listen to my own work, but I've gone back and done this to pick stuff out. And so I go, wow, you know, here's Oh, wow. Great. Here's Great Divide Revisited. Man, I probably haven't played that song in 35 years.
Wow.
I don't even remember how it goes. I think I'll let me find the record. And then here's the funny thing. Then I go looking around, and I've got the vinyl, but I'm way beyond lifting up the needle and putting it back and forth like we did in the old days to learn something. And so I've wound up having to go, if it's not still available, having to go to eBay and buy my own CD so I can get the thing in and learn the song, you know. I now have a complete collection of all my Airplane and Hot Tuna CDs as a result of the pandemic, as things I've bought so I can learn these old songs. And so I've gone back in to things I haven't played in years. And, you know, when you're playing gigs, it keeps you sharp with your show, but that's not practicing. I've had the opportunity to go back and actually practice the guitar in a way that I haven't in decades. Not because I didn't want to, but just because I don't, because when you play, you're playing like, you know, 2-3 hours a night, whatever it is. And then when you're home, you do what you're doing. It just hasn't been part of my life. So the guitar has invited me back into its house again to not just relearn old things, but to apply some of the new stuff, you know, harmony ideas, this and that I've learned over the years. Is it going to screw a song up if I use a fancy jazz chord here? And the answer to that is usually yes, but but I'll take the time to try it and see if it works, etc. Anyway, so the magic of the guitar that sort of seduced me so many years ago is alive and well, and I've had the time and the necessity to answer its call.
That's amazing. What's the difference functionally between playing, you know, 3 or 4 nights a week on the road and practicing? Why is that not the same?
Well, I think that you know, I talked about this a little bit about one of the, without actually getting into the skin of it. You know, when I'm doing my show, I'm focusing on what it takes to know any given song well enough so I'm not going to make a fool out of myself playing it. Now, you know, that being said, and I tell students all the time, look, everybody makes mistakes. I don't care how good you are. But it's the recovery factory and your ability to keep smiling when that happens. But when I practice things, maybe I'll pick something like, well, let's, for example, on my Stars My Crown album, I do this song it's sort of like a paraphrasing of Reverend Davis's version of a gospel song called Stars in My Crown. And it's a bear to play. It is, I mean, you know, I know how it goes, but it's not performance ready. So I've been practicing that to bring it back to where it's performance ready, because again, it's a hard song to play. And so I want to be able to get through that. So to be able to focus on the details that make a song sound, for lack of a better word, professional, rather than a student that's in the process of learning something, that just wants to show somebody what they're doing.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So that's a huge difference. And the other thing too is that the Corona concert, I mean our quarantine concerts, I played a plugged-in guitar the first night we did it, and after that I went, listen, we're in a fabulous acoustic room. I happen to own a bunch of really great acoustic guitars. Why plug in? And so ever since we did that, everything's just been completely au naturel. You know, for us, and I use the term loosely, acoustic guitar players that plug in, we buy all these gadgets and all this stuff to make it sound like we're not plugged in, you know. But here we're generally not plugged in, and that something else went along with this too. Our ranch manager, John Hurlbut, we've been friends for pushing 40 years, and he's a really interesting guy. You know, he has his own musical thing, and he's a storyteller. He picks songs that he likes. And I've been playing with him off and on. Like when we did our faux restaurant, we played for the lunch crowd. We've been doing all this silly stuff together, but I really like playing with it. And so I went, you know, in the beginning of June, I went, you know, John, here we are sitting around here. I've got time on my hands. This will never happen again. Let's you and me make an album together. So I got my friend Justin. He's the drummer in Hot Tuna, but he's Larry Campbell's production partner. And he came down, brought a studio in a box down to the ranch. And John and I cut 24 songs in 2 days, and we never did more than 2 takes. Live, no music magic, no overdubbing, completely acoustic. And I'm an accompanist. I'm playing lead guitar on an acoustic guitar. And he's accompanying himself and singing the songs. And so, most people think about, well, you're not the drummer, you're not featuring yourself. I got to do with John Hurlbut what I got to do with the Airplane, which is to try to make a singer, the rest of the band sound great. When I'm doing Hot Tuna, I'm the front guy. When I'm playing Jorma, I'm obviously the front guy. So we've been buying these reissue stuff from this company in France called the Culture Factory that reissued a whole bunch of stuff, like Hot Tuna stuff, Jefferson Airplane stuff, where they recreated the original album exactly as it was, but in a CD format. And Johnny knows one of the guys, and he calls him up and tells him what we're doing. He says, "How would you like a record company to put your album out?" I told John, Hot Tuna couldn't get a record deal today,
Right.
And so in the blink of an eye of us recording this thing, we got a record deal, and they're going to do a double album for us. And we're going to have an album that's going to be coming out in the fall for the Record Store Day, and next year also. And they're going to do a 12-page booklet with photos and all kinds of stuff. I mean, I told John, I said, do you realize how lucky we are in this day and age that we get to do something like this? It's unbelievable. So yeah. And so me and Johnny have a record coming out, and so we're fired up about that.
That's amazing. That's really amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah, and somebody that would invest in, like, to your point, the packaging and sort of making it. It's one thing to just digitize it and make it available for people to download or whatever, but to actually make the investment.
Oh yeah,
in the
there's going to be limited runs of vinyl, 180 grain vinyl. That's coming out first, and then next year we're going to do the CDs and downloads, of course, because that's the deal. But I mean, to me, like when I did Blue Country Heart in the early 2000s, the A&R guy, Yves Loubet, that when I was talking about doing that, he goes, "Jorma, why do you want to do this? You could do it yourself, and it would be cheaper, because doing Blue Country Heart wound up costing me money." And my answer was, for the cachet, because if it's not on a real label, to me, it's not real. And it was a perfect storm for us that year, because I got a Grammy nomination, a lot of that. I made a great record, and a lot of stuff happened. But to me, being the old guy that I am, to actually be able to do a project for a company that has a trademark, whatever it is, it's like a big deal.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. As you've gone back to re-listen to some of the music after not doing so for a long time, is there anything that's hard to listen to because of where you were at? Is there do you have any cringe-worthy moments where you just where it hurts a little, or? Mercifully,
no. Now I've gotten to the point now where I don't really have any secrets anymore. And when somebody like has some grainy video of me doing something back in the 70s or the early 80s, whatever, when I'm obviously really drunk or something like that, I go, I probably prefer not to. They go, "You ought to put this out as a CD." I go, as a DVD. I don't think so. I guess that's as cringeworthy as it gets. But in terms of the music that we made back then with the Airplane with Hot Tuna, like Ness and I are pottering around the ranch yesterday, and Grace calls me out of the blue just to talk, And I told her the same thing. I said, "Listen, I've been listening to all of our old stuff because I'm going to be snagging some Airplane songs for the quarantine concerts as time goes on. And I got to tell you," I said, "I listen to stuff and I go, wow, we were pretty good." And she said, "I feel the same thing." And with the other thing I said to her, having listened to a lot of Airplane stuff recently, like I was just listening to the Volunteers yesterday when I was going to pick the kid up at volleyball practice. I'm listening to a song like "We Can Be Together." I don't know how something like that plays today to a younger audience that really just thinks about the '60s as a party in the summer of love. But there was, for those of us that were there was more to it than that. Yes, some of the political ideas are naive in the light of today's world, but the Jefferson Airplane was a culturally, artistically, and intellectually honest band, whether you agreed with us or not. And even though we wanted to be commercially successful, we did not care about being commercial. And looking back at that's an artistic integrity that I'm proud of. And so I don't find any of those moments cringeworthy at all. And there might be some moments that I prefer not to share with the world, but generally speaking, I'm okay.
Yeah, I think that's a really fascinating point about the Airplane. That record in particular is like that. Volunteers is sort of, to me, the culmination of everything coming together: the songwriting, the political lyric, obviously the musicianship. That's just some of the tracks on there. Eskimo Blue Day. Like, I listen to that record, I go back to it even now.
Yeah.
And it's such a great summation of that era. And also, to your point, it's a bit. I think it is frustrating to me as a fan and listener that there isn't a way to introduce that music to younger people sort of at scale, because I do think people would be very surprised about the freshness of it and the relevancy of it, and that it wasn't.
I think that having a teenage daughter who occasionally turns me on to music I find interesting, and some of the stuff it just doesn't interest me. She's sort of been like, like, for example, I've wound up really liking Frank Ocean a lot. Mm-hmm. And sort of like, I don't know whether it's rap or, I don't know, I'm not into categories, but there's another guy that she did, I love this. I wonder if people do, an EP, remember EPs, like a 10-inch EP or something like that? So this guy, August 08, because that was his father's birthday, did an EP of like 8, and they're sort of, I don't know what to call it, but they're sort of like in the rap category, something like that. But it's really powerful writing, But anyway, to get back to what you're saying about grandfather and some of our stuff it's hard to share the soundtrack of one's life with somebody else, They're going to need to discover the artistic relevance of it on their own. And I would imagine at some point, many of them will, in the same way that we discovered stuff in the 20s and 30s, et cetera, that was important to us. I mean, you think of, I just listened to Bob Dylan's new record, which I think it's a really good album, and I found it really interesting. But the Bob Dylan soundtrack of my life record is Blonde on Blonde. That's the one. I've listened to a lot of his stuff. I think he is one of our greatest living writers, period. But nothing moves me like that record. So for us to capture people that don't have that memory well to go to, that just a moment's got to be right. And they're going to listen to Eskimo Blue Day. What a great song that is. Talk about being a non-typical rock and roll song. Yeah, you picked one of the winners for sure. Yeah. At some point, one of these youngsters is going to go, man, fire-eating people. What's not to like about that?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's to me, to indulge in a last moment of sort of nostalgia porn. I think it's it's so sad that the world does not have Grace Slick in it out there singing and participating musically. I love her so much. I think she's such a personality of the moment. She'd be her voice, not only her singing voice, but her point of view is so relevant. Yeah, and so powerful.
Well, one of the things, like I said, she called me out of the blue yesterday morning. We're just talking, and she has ideas that I obviously don't agree with about elderly people playing rock and roll. But we're just talking about stuff, and she goes, I just loved being. She said, some people didn't like being in the studio. I loved being in the studio, and I said, well, it really showed, And then she starts talking to me about how she still, she doesn't play in public, but she's still writing songs and playing at home. And of course, I immediately went, listen, if you're ever doing a studio thing and you need a guitar player and you don't give me a call, I'm really going to be pissed. I mean, I have no idea whether she has any desire to do this, but it really made me feel good because because I thought she just like put it behind her, you know, but apparently not. Apparently she just put being the public creator of music behind her. So I thought, wow, that's really cool. So we may never hear it, but she's doing something.
You know what? I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's good enough, right? Like that's her choice and it's her personal preference. But I love to know that she still has that.
Me too.
Drive and that outlet.
Yeah, because she's one of the great female. It's not the great. It's one of the great female voices of my time, and you know, and as an artist also. And again, since we've invoked Eskimo Blue Day, what an unbelievable piece of writing that is.
Yeah, and the vocal performance. I know.
Well, I mean, you know, I always take her vocal performance for granted because she's Grace Slick, but yeah, and the vocal performance, absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is I've always loved that her real rhythmic chord-driven piano playing. I love the simplicity of her piano playing. It's great. Well, I want to be super respectful of your time. But I wanted to ask you just a couple of quick things. It was very strange coincidence. I told you I lived in New York for a long time, and I had a period of time where I moved out of the city for a year or so, and I lived in Mamaroneck, New York. And if you happen to know Mamaroneck at all, you might know it as the place where Reverend Davis lived for a while before he and Annie moved to Harlem. And the place I rented was, the mythology of it was this villa that the politicians and the business leaders of New York used to use in the 20s and 30s. It was basically like they would take a boat up on the weekend, and it was kind of like their cat house. It was where they'd spend the weekend with their mistresses, and during Prohibition, it's where they'd go to drink. But it turned out that that Annie Davis, when she used to clean the building, she was a house cleaner. And she was basically, it was one of the places she worked. And, it all adds up to nothing, but it was such a fascinating, just little anecdote. And, I think about him so much as he's such a pivotal figure of guitar players in your generation.
Absolutely.
And I wonder, maybe it's an unfair question, but what is it about Gary Davis that so captivated you guys?
It's absolutely not an unfair question, and it's not one that has a simple answer to it. I got turned on to Reverend Davis in 1960 at Antioch College by a guy that became my friend, Ian Buchanan, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. But when I listened to it, I'd always been sort of enamored of fingerstyle guitar, but I'd never seen it done. I'd never known anybody that did it, and so that's the spring quarter at Antioch, where I was living in a house with Ian, who was a masterful player. Even though Lonnie Johnson was his muse, Reverend Davis was his buddy, and he knew a lot of stuff, but he didn't study him like Stephen Grossman and some of the other guys did. So anyway, so he turned me on to the Reverend, and there was just something about the music. Now, here I am, a non-observant Jewish guy. What is so attractive about this extremely Christian music in general? And the answer is, it was just way more than that. I mean, there's just I always felt that Reverend Davis was a biophile. I mean, he was just a lover of life. And if you haven't read his Say No to the Devil biography, it's a must read. You got to get it. But anyway, here's a guy that was born in the 1800s that did not have an easy life on any possible level. Being born a man of color in the Carolinas at that time, being blind, I mean, all this kind of stuff, But I never studied with the Reverend, but I met him a number of times, and he was just. There was never a not upbeat moment with him that I experienced. And I always heard that in his music, whether he's doing a song like Bad Company Brought Me Here, like Screw the Death Cap on My Head, or Death Don't Have No Mercy, or Bright Side Somewhere, or I'll Be All Right Someday. I mean, whatever it was, whether whether it was a song with a sort of a more realistic, dour outlook, or and everything's going to be all right song, there was always joy submerged in the art, you know. And as a guitar player, it just grabbed me. Now, it didn't grab me in the way that some people did, because I don't have the talent to mimic other people, which as a professional musician, it has served me well over the years. But in those days, I got a lot of criticism for, well, Reverend didn't do it that way. And I go, well, what can I tell you, you know? But there's just something so incredibly powerful about what I perceived of as his love of life, and sharing it with a world that had to be another galaxy from the one that he grew up with in the Carolinas, you know? I mean, it's unbelievable. It really is. And, you know, and just to fast forward to the present, more or less, I mean, the fact that Peter, Paul, and Mary recorded Samson and Delilah, even there was a lawsuit involved in that, but it's okay, because he made a bunch of money off that song. It was a hit. And guys like me that recorded this song, and there's lots of guys like me that did that stuff, that allowed him and Annie to live in their own home and to have a southern place. I mean, not just one home. So, I mean, here's a guy that didn't drive, that owned 2 cars, you know. So anyway, right. 2 cars and probably a revolver, but that's another story. It's in the book, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was doing a gig, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and I'm out in Rockville Center. He and Annie are buried at this absolutely unpretentious little cemetery in Rockville Center in Long Island. And I went there and, you know, put a stone on his grave, and it was cool. But I mean, to get back to your question, there was just something so positively seductive about every aspect of his music to me. And, you know, and I loved it so much. Like, for example, like one of the songs that I recorded with Hot Tuna, Sally, Where'd You Get Your Liquor From? Ian just called it Dancing. I didn't even know that it wasn't called that until we recorded. I didn't even realize, you know, I mean, I did all these Reverend Gary Davis songs, and I didn't realize that Reverend Gary Davis essentially wrote them. Like right. Hesitation Blues, I learned it from Ian, but it's the Reverend's version. I didn't know that till we had to do the copyright on the song. So there's something that I love that obviously was more than just him, but but the hymnness of it all just sort of blanketed everything.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jorma, because that comes through in how I've grown to perceive you, especially in the last 15 or 20 years, as you've kind of shared different aspects of yourself in your journals and in some of your online work. That there is there's just this real attempt, this natural attempt to project some positivity into the world, to just like contribute some joy. And you can write about and talk about heavy topics, but you don't dwell on the negative aspects of them. You always turn it around to where's the hidden blessing in it, or where's the gift in it. And I don't think that that's trivial. I mean, that's an amazing attribute in this world. But it sounds like the exact same thing you're describing with Gary Davis. It's amazing.
I think that on some level, having been allowed to survive as long as I have has really made me grateful in a lot of ways. That being said, I'm far from perfect. And when I picked my daughter up in volleyball yesterday, for lack of a better word, I was a grumpy Gus, and I'm going to have to apologize to her for it today, because you know all the stuff we're going through affects us in a lot of ways, and I'm pretty upbeat most of the time, but sometimes I'm just not. Hey, that's life, you know. And instead of taking the higher ground, I kind of took it out on her. So I'm going to have to apologize about that. But generally speaking, you know, as somebody that's alive in this world, I'm really grateful to be here. Is there stuff to complain about? You bet there is, you know. But it doesn't have to dominate my existence like I think it used to before I got sober.
Yeah, I understand that. All right, one last question, and then I'll mercifully let you go. I was listening to an interview with G.E. Smith a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about Michael Bloomfield, and he made the comment that when he heard Michael Bloomfield and when he's heard other blues players talk about Michael Bloomfield, the comment was that, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, was that he really played the blues. he wasn't just some guy, some white guy playing the blues. He really played the blues the right way.
True.
And I wonder what playing the blues the right way, what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. I know exactly what he means, and it's going to be hard to really put my finger on it. So I've got Michael Bloomfield's biography. Michael Bloomfield, Guitar King, is next to my bed. It weighs like 20 pounds. It's been intimidating, you know. But I'm going to read it because I also was a huge Michael Bloomfield fan when the Butterfield Blues Band put out East West, which I think is a seminal American album of any epoch. And they came to San Francisco to tour. The Airplane had just gotten together. Signe was still in the band. It was pre-Grace. I was playing a Rickenbacker 12-string and a Guild Thunderbird. And Michael Bloomfield, for some reason, when the Butterfield Blues Band came to town, for some reason, he and his wife at the time came over to our place, my ex-wife's and my place in the Western Addition, to have dinner. And for some reason, you know, because, you know, I love blues, but I didn't know I never played electric guitar before. I didn't know how to do that stuff. For some reason, he took it upon himself to show me, you know, kind of what it was all about, bending strings, you know, using amps, because we didn't have pedals back then, using amps to, you know, get sustain and overdrive and stuff like this. And as I got to know him a little bit and talk to him, I realized that here's this guy from an upper-class Jewish family who loved the blues and went, you know, in a you know, whether segregation wasn't the law of the land back then, it, you know, it was still a pretty segregated country. And, you know, for him to go into the area where blues was being played in Chicago and to be accepted by the players of that time as their equal and to be brought into the fold, it wasn't like, I'm going to teach you to play the blues. He obviously had so much passion that they said, come and play with me, you know. So the, you know, the guitar, the quote unquote level of guitar playing, the bar, has been raised exponentially since I was a kid, as it should be. But the truth of what happens in real blues players cannot be taught. And so, you know, if somebody's, you know, you hear all these kids that are like really, the technically really great guitar players, and I love that and I admire it because I'm a guitar player. But listen to a Hubert Sumlin accompaniment on any Howlin' Wolf cut that he's on or something like that. I mean, there's just something so honest and primal about being a blues player. And Michael Bloomfield, even though he's a much more noted player than Hubert was, Michael had that. He wasn't just playing the guitar, he was playing the blues. So it's kind of hard to really give a real sort of a literate definition to this question. But you know, this is really a mixed metaphor, but I'm going to throw it out there. It's, you know, it's like pornography. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it, you know. Blues, it's hard to define, but you know it when you hear it.
Well, that's a great note to leave on, Jorma. Thank you so much for your generosity of spirit and time. And just, you know, for me personally, all the music you've given me over the years, I feel like
my pleasure.
It's always like going to see an old friend when I go see you in concert, and I feel like I was catching up with somebody I haven't spoken to in a while. So please stay healthy.
Well, I hope we actually, thanks so much. I hope we get a chance to actually say hello in the real world one of these days. I'm sure we will. And, you know, people talk about this and that. And look, honestly, none of us have any idea what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. And until it does, we're going to keep on going with our quarantine concerts, and you know, and I look forward at some point to getting back out on the road again. I mean, look, you know, life goes on; it'll be different, but hopefully we'll be smiling. And like I said, I hope to see you in person, and you can show me around. Hopefully, it won't be a rainy season when I'm up there.
Thank you, Jorma and Vanessa Kaukonen, and thank you, Cash Edwards, for making this conversation happen. Thanks to Ant Taylor and the entire team at Light. If you're interested in what we're up to at Light, visit us at lyte.com. And as always, thank you, the listener, for joining us with Spotlight On. We're available from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you like to get your podcasts from. And please, while you're grabbing our podcast, leave a rating and a review. It's so important to our ongoing success. As always, keep your feedback coming. Reach me directly at lp@light.com. Thank you so much. Be safe and stay in touch.
Thank you. Where's Jack? I think he's out with the hovercraft somewhere.